Now I'm going to speak the history of Karafuto and other northern areas of Japan, as I said in my promotion video. Let's begin. From ancient age, Japanese visited and had commercial, religious, military, or fishery activities at Karafuto. It is written in many Japanese, Chinese, and Korean history records. In 1593, Regent Toyotomi Hideyoshi gave the warrant for Kakizaki clan to govern Hokkaido, Karafuto, Chishima, and Kamchatka. Matsumae, former Kakizaki clan, they changed their surname from Kakizaki to Matsumae. Matsumae is where they put their castle on. They submitted maps and census of these regions to the latter Tokugawa shogunate. In the beginning of the 19th century, the Russian Empire finally reached to the Okhotsk Sea coast and started to give militaristic pressure to Japan. In 1855, Russo-Japanese Treaty of Amity was concluded that confirmed boundary between the islands of Etorofu and Urup. Until then, the Russian Empire gradually deprived Japan of Kamchatka and islands Shimush to Urup, the northern part of Chishima. Karafuto was still Japanese territory, but Japan could not help admitting the right of commerce and residence of Russians who already came to Karafuto. Look at this map, especially Karafuto Island. You can see malicious dots on it. It looks like pestilence, black plague. In 1867, the provisional rules for Karafuto was concluded between Japan and Russia. Karafuto was still Japan's. However, the militaristic pressure from Russia became more severe because the Russian Empire gained Outer Manchuria from Qin dynasty in 1858. Before then, in 1840, the Opium War ended by the defeat of Qin dynasty against the British Empire. After that, Russia didn't hide the arrogant ambition to Northeast Asia, including Outer Manchuria and coastal area of the Okhotsk Sea. In 1875, the Treaty of St. Petersburg was concluded between both countries. At last, with sorrow and tragedy, Japan lost Karafuto. Instead, Japan regained northern-west part of Tsushima from Urup Island to northernmost Shimushu Island, which were absolutely desolated though. On the beginning of the 20th century, the big event, epoch-making case occurred. A long victory of Japan in the Russo-Japanese War in 1905, the Treaty of Portsmouth was concluded between both countries. Japan recovered the half of Karafuto, the southern part of the island, due to the remarkable victories both at land and sea against the Russian Empire. You can remember the surrender of Port Arthur or the defeat of the Battle of Mukden of Russian army. Also, the perfect game of the combined fleet of Japan Navy, the Battle of Tsushima, complete ruin of the Russian Baltic Fleet on 27th of May 1905. After the conclusion of the former treaty, St. Petersburg Treaty, 1875, Ainu people in Karafuto, ethnic group in Japan, had to choose the citizenship of either Japan or Russia. Ainu people who had been living with Japanese for a long time hesitated and eventually refused to be Russians, who had been very violent to them. They chose to be Japanese citizens as before and evacuated their homeland Karafuto to Hokkaido. After about 3 decades, the war began against Russia. Although Ainu people was not imposed military service, they volunteered to be Japanese soldiers to fight against Russia in order to regain their homeland Karafuto. After their victory for the battles, the Treaty of Portsmouth was concluded, and their homeland became theirs again. They were really pleased to come back to their land. However, pitifully, northern part of their home island was still under the hand of the enemy. Time went by for 40 years. At the end of the World War II, this story is the biggest tragedy which I would definitely like to let you know. In 1945, Russia, the Soviet Union, suddenly broke the Russo-Japanese Neutrality Pact, declared war against Japan, and invaded Karafuto as well as Manchuria and Tsushima Islands. They went on invading Karafuto and Tsushima Islands. Nevertheless, Japan accepted ceasefire of the Second World War on 14th of August 1945. Just in front of Hokkaido, they stopped invading Japanese territory since the President Truman strongly required Stalin to stop his military. All Karafuto and Tsushima Islands were occupied illegally since then. The Emperor, His Majesty, let his subjects, Japanese people, know that Japan surrendered to the United Nations, received disarmament, and peacefully obeyed to them. What was Russian reply? The answers were massacre, plunder, abduction, or rape. They killed truce bearers from Japanese army. Furthermore, even if an ambassador was a civilian, the mayor of Estoru town, as a truce bearer of citizens, he was shot to kill. They sank 3 evacuation ships full of children, ladies, or old after the war by submarine. As a matter of fact, my grandfather, as well, captured by Russian army at Manchuria to the forests of Siberia and forced to work just as a slave labor. Of course, they were all against the international law, illegal. They did all the evil just as they are doing now in Ukraine. And just they did in Georgia, Chechen, or Syria. Now I say we have to make captive people, captive territory, captive history free, hopefully as peacefully as possible. Do our best together. Otherwise, they never stop invading. As you can see these maps. See this map? This is what Stalin demanded. He wanted to split Hokkaido and rob Japan of the northern part of her. And this is a map what Sergei Mironov, a Russian politician, claimed. He said Hokkaido is Russians. Ridiculous. However, not only Mironov, but also other Russian government high-ranking officers claim like that. They are insane.